Faithfulness is something that's expressed between two parties. Could be a husband and a wife, friends, teammates, a person and a cause. But most importantly, between you and God. And when it comes to faithfulness, we ask the question, will you be loyal regardless of circumstance? Will you be true to your word, your commitments, and your convictions? Are you someone who is steadfast and dedicated no matter the cost? Daniel is a story of faithfulness tested in a new culture, through heavy persecution and trials, in the big things and in the small. How do we remain faithful to God? And how does God remain faithful to us?
If you have your Bibles, go ahead and turn to the book of Daniel. We'll be studying all of chapter 3 this evening. So we're going to take a look at a story that illustrates faithfulness in the face of trials. And this is a story that most of you should recognize from Sunday school. Now, if you remember, the book of Daniel is about 4 young men who have been taken from the nation of Israel. They've been led as captive prisoners of war into the nation of Babylon, which is in modern-day Iraq. So Daniel and his 3 buddies, they've been selected by King Nebuchadnezzar to be educated, and they're to be trained in the royal court. They were going to stay there to learn the language. They're going to learn the culture, they'll learn the commerce of the kingdom, and hopefully one day they were going to have positions of leadership and authority in the kingdom themselves. Now in this story, King Nebuchadnezzar, who is one of the most powerful rulers of the world at that time, he decides that he's going to make a 90-foot tall golden statue of himself, and he's going to make everyone bow down and worship it. And so he issues this decree in the land. He says, hey, at the sound of the music, whoever doesn't bow down and worship my idol is going to be thrown into a fiery furnace. Ooh, scary, right? Okay, so imagine a furnace. It's like this huge oven, this huge pit that you would use. You would heat things up. You could melt massive amounts of metal so that you could make weapons or tools or 90-foot tall statues, whatever you want, okay? So it's this big, huge furnace. It's super hot, and if you get thrown in there, you'll be super dead, right? That's what these guys are up against. That's what we're working with. And so the king is furious that these young men refuse to bow down to his idol. Right? He says this, if you do not bow down and worship, you shall immediately be cast into a burning fiery furnace. And who is the God who will deliver you out of my hands? You can almost just hear him throwing down this gauntlet, right? And so these young men are faced with a decision and given an ultimatum. Worship this idol or die. This raging response from a prideful king, right? And so if you have your Bibles with you, I want you to read with me their response to King Nebuchadnezzar, verse 16 through 18, because it's the heart of the story and the turning point of our lesson today. It says this, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If this be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning, fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up today. The courage of that response. We have so much to learn from those words about what it means to be faithful amidst trials. The big thing that I want us to see here is that true faith is rooted in what God can do, not in what we want him to do. The almost ironic part about this story is the confidence that these young men have in the middle of their uncertainty. They are completely resolute that they won't change what they're doing regardless of the outcome. So you'd think that when they come to this place, they'd say, hey, I'm not bowing down because I know our God is going to save us. But they don't. They know that God is working according to his perfect will. And even though they're not sure if they're going to live or die, they've decided that they are still going to be faithful to God. You guys see how bold that is? I mean, how different is that from the faith that we so often have? Because most of the time, we go around praying, asking, pleading with God, just begging him for the results that we want. We say, God, would you please help me pass this test? God, would you please help me make this team or get into this program that I auditioned for? God, would you please help me win this game? God, would you help me fit in with this friend group? God, would you please help me get into this college? And so what we end up saying is, hey, I just have faith that God's going to help me out, right? I just have faith, right? We get so caught up, we think, man, you just got to believe, you just got to have faith. And most of the time we treat our concept of faith like this sort of blind hope for something that we want. And then what happens is we end up getting disappointed and losing hope in God when we don't get what we had hoped for. I love how this story kind of stares us in the face, and it points out the fact that for most people, we are so prone to base our faithfulness on results. Do I get what I want, right? Because it's so easy to be faithful and committed to God when we get what we want. But I would tell you that's not faithfulness. That's manipulation. The response of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego challenges that tendency that we have, and it says, true faith isn't about what we want God to do. It's about who God is and what he can do. These young men understood that God's faithfulness would remain true regardless of whether or not their lives were spared. They said, we will be faithful no matter what, because he will be faithful no matter what. As you go into your small groups tonight, take some time and walk through the rest of this passage. Pay close attention to the end of the story and see the way in which God faithfully delivers his people for his purposes and his glory, because he is always faithful.